The following talk was given at the Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City, California. Please visit our website at audiodharma.org.
This Saturday, the meditation and yoga workshop is a return for Lali and I. We taught this about a year ago. And for those of you who don't know Lali, she is a delightful woman, practitioner. She was one of the first wave of yoga students in the 60s and 70s who studied with BKS Iyengar, went to India, and then brought the practice of yoga and taught for many years in Palo Alto and around here. And I think she's 86 or 87 or something, and it's amazing, just she credits it to yoga. And so whenever we meet to talk, I met at her house to talk about our class that we're going to do, and I always get this great workout. She just puts me through everything she's going to be teaching. So. It's very sweet, so looking forward to that. And so last week we talked a little bit about, or a lot about, the quality of relaxation, of the value of relaxation, the benefits of relaxation, how through relaxing the body there can be a way that the mind relaxes, the mind releases, the heart releases, and that is very supportive of the shift in perspective that Dharma practice encourages. From a very fixed view of me and the world to something that's more, that's not so rigid. And the less tension there is, the less clinging there is, the less self there is, in the sense of self as a contraction, self as this movement of contraction. And so one of the extensions of that, or the corollary of that, is the less tension, the less clinging, the less contraction, the less self there is, the more love can kind of shine through us, in this sense of love as a quality of the heart, a quality of the mind that that somehow is maybe is inherent to who we are, maybe, and maybe there are ways that we block this. And so part of the movement of practice is just allowing those barriers to love to be seen, to be understood, and to be released, to be dissolved. It is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. Yeah. So I thought maybe it's nice to say a few words about a Dharma, one Dharma understanding of love. One of the teachers of our teachers, kind of the revered elders of this tradition, and a woman who is considered a a master of meditation and a master of Dharma practice in a very special way was a woman called Dipa Ma. You might have heard of her. She was an Indian woman who came to meditation practice in middle age or in late middle age when she was living in Burma. And she had had somewhat of a difficult life. And in the span of a few short years, her husband had died, and then one of her daughters had died. And she was heartbroken and basically was in a deep depression and went to the meditation center as sort of a last ditch effort. And on her first meditation retreat, she talked about how she was walking across the courtyard, and this is just to give a little bit of context, this is in Burma, and I believe this was at the Mahasi Center, the Mahasi style of Vipassana practice. And this style of practice is the instructions are to walk very slowly and to be very mindful. When you're sitting, to be mindful of the rising and falling of the belly. When you walk, just to be mindful of the feet stepping. So it's this very close, very careful, somewhat strict, compared to what we do on retreat, somewhat strict way of practice. And so in the middle of her retreat, she was walking across the courtyard, and then suddenly she stopped. But she didn't know why she had stopped, and she just couldn't go anymore. And then at some point she realized that there was a dog down there that had clamped its teeth around her legs, or her leg. But she was so deep in the meditation, she was so deep in her concentration in a samadhi that she couldn't feel. she couldn't feel the dog biting her. And this is just one example of this sort of extraordinary aptitude for meditation and for concentration that she had, just on her first retreat, and she very quickly, went through the meditation practice and then became a teacher herself. And her teacher talked about how Dipa Ma was more advanced than he was. And so he would just teach her out of these old meditation manuals, and she could just do these things that he couldn't do. So anyway, so she was that's all that to say that she was a very special practitioner and meditator. And she was once asked by one of our Western teachers who was studying with her, "What's in your mind right now? What is your mind like?" And she said, there are only 3 things in my mind: concentration, peace, and metta, and love. And so there's something about metta. Metta is one of the words, maybe the closest word in the language, the language of Pali, the language of the Buddhist teachings, that translates as love. But there's something about metta that is very much the nature of this practice, or very much the fruits of this practice. So I wanted to say a little bit about some ways that meditation practice is a practice of love, or what are the things we can learn about metta, about love, through meditation practice. Metta, you've probably heard that word before, or it's usually translated as loving kindness. Sometimes it's translated as kindness, friendliness. It has this quality of softness, of openness. Maybe we can say that it has a quality of unconditional love. In the Dharma teachings about love, metta is often grouped with these other flavors of love, which are compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So the way I think about it is, if metta is love, then when love meets suffering, when love meets difficulty, when love meets pain, it becomes compassion. So that's one flavor of love. And then on the other side, when love meets joy, when love meets happiness, when love meets the good things that happen to others, it can become this sympathetic joy, this empathetic joy. We're happy for others. And then equanimity is this flavor of mind that has to do with the ups and downs of life, and the somewhat the not knowing, the just not knowing how things are going to be, the nature, the contingent, impermanent nature of things can be very unsettling. When we really take in this truth that we don't know what's going to happen. And so when love meets this uncertainty or this fear, then it can become equanimity. Equanimity is this place of balance. So that's nice, isn't it? It's like love has these different flavors. And there are a few things I wanted to read. This is a poem, I think it's Hafiz. It's called It Felt Love. How did the rose ever open its heart and give to this world all its beauty? It felt the encouragement of light against its being. Otherwise, we all remain too frightened. How did the rose ever open its heart and give to this world all its beauty? It felt the encouragement of light against its being. Otherwise, we all remain too frightened. This is called It Felt Love. And one of the ways I appreciate this idea is that all of us who are here have in some way in our life experienced love. We've sometimes it's said that the inspiration to practice Dharma, to practice meditation, is itself, it's an enlightened inspiration, it's an enlightened activity. It's like, this is where we start. It's like love has somehow brought us here. And one of the so love has brought us here, and in some way we've been loved into existence, and I say that also with an awareness that many of us have difficulties around, it might be around the idea of love, it might have been around the expression of love, the way we've maybe weren't loved in the way that we could have been or had hoped to be. And so this is all in the mix. It's all, So there's something about love that brings us to practice. Even if we maybe are not so in touch with it when we sit down to practice, maybe there's something about love that brings us to practice. And then one of the offerings of Dharma practice is love as a practice itself. Love as a sort of implicit and explicit practice. Implicit, I would say, maybe we can say love is closely connected to mindfulness, to this act of giving our attention, giving our awareness to something. Children maybe know they're loved by the attention we give to them, the way we see them. And even though sometimes I find it a little bit irritating, I don't know if that's the word, I want to use the word around my children and this topic, but there's a way that, especially my 3-year-old, when she wants to get our attention, she just goes for it. And I could be on the phone or I could be talking to someone, and first it was like Papa, and Papa, 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 and this sort of she's not socialized into necessarily the ways of manners and things that we're, that's what we work with her on. But something more fundamental is like she's demanding the love that she needs. She's sort of asserting, I need this, give this to me now. I need your attention, I need your care, I need to be seen right now. And she has some expectation that that's going to be met. So, that's good, I think. Even in the moment, it can be a lot. So in this practice, maybe there's an implicit way that by what we give our attention to, we're giving our love to. By what we give our care, our warmth to, by what we see, by what we know, we're in some way infusing that with love. And it can be that, when there's some sense of ease, some sense of calm, when the mind is not so entangled and caught up, we can start to feel that more and more, this basic unity of, like as Deepa Ma was saying, there's concentration, there's mindfulness, and there's love. Those are the things that are in my mind. And then, one of the very sweet things about this particular style of meditation practice, or this particular stream of Buddhism, is that there are explicit, if just being mindful, just being aware, just seeing everything inside and everything we meet, if there's a way that's like loving everything, to see is to love, or to accept everything is to love everything. There's an explicit practice of metta, of love. And I thought just to read what the Buddha said about this, because it's really front and center in the teachings of the Buddha. It's not an aside. It's not only the byproduct or the fruit of a lifetime of practice. Then I can love people. It's right there at the beginning. So this is the Metta Sutta. To reach the state of peace, one skilled in the good should be capable and upright, straightforward and easy to speak to, gentle and not proud, contented and easily supported, living lightly and with few duties, wise and with senses calmed, not arrogant and without greed for supporters, and should not do the least thing that the wise would criticize. One should reflect, may all be happy and secure. May all beings be happy at heart. All living beings, whether weak or strong, tall, large, medium or short, tiny or big, seen or unseen, near or distant, born or to be born, may they all be happy. Let no one deceive another or despise anyone anywhere. Let no one through anger or aversion wish for others to suffer. As a mother would risk her own life to protect her child, her only child, so toward all beings should one cultivate a boundless heart. With love for the whole world should one cultivate a boundless heart, above, below, and all around, without obstruction, without hate. Standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, whenever one is awake, may one stay with this recollection. This is called a sublime abiding here and now. One who is virtuous, endowed with vision, not taken by views, having overcome all greed for sensual pleasure, will be freed from birth and death. So one of the interesting things to me about this is it's proposing a practice of recollecting, of wishing, of sort of setting the heart's intention for care, for love, for the well-being of others, for all beings. And it's one of the very nice things, one of the ways that I've seen this work in meditation practice, and especially on meditation retreats, is when I or someone is encountering difficult emotions or difficult, whether there's a lot of anger coming up, a lot of fear, a lot of sadness, or anxiety, or grief, or all the difficult things that a human life produces. One of the most powerful antidotes is metta, is love. And there's a way that it's not so much that this is a feeling, that there's a right feeling of metta, to get into this state of love or get into this feeling, that it's really this intention. It's really just inclining the mind, inclining the heart to have this wish that's oriented outwards. It includes ourselves. All beings includes ourselves. But there's something magical about, that metta, that love can't exist. It occupies the same sort of territory in our being as some of these more closing, contracted emotions. So it's something just to try to just drop in this intention, this wish, when we feel our world and our self is closed and small and contracted and in pain. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. And it's this. It can be this wonderful antidote. And then, if we practice just bringing up this intention, it could be before meditation sitting or afterwards. It could be before we go to bed at night. Just to see what the effects are. I found when I started doing this before I fell asleep, it really seemed to change the quality of my sleep, of the way something could rest, the way something could relax and be at ease and let go. Just to put this wish out there, drop it into the heart. One of the interesting things about metta practice, about this practice of loving kindness, is that traditionally there's a sort of progression. So if one is practicing this on a retreat or in a sort of intensive way, we first start with sending love to ourselves. And this was a little bit surprising for me when I first heard this teaching. It's the first, the practice of metta starts with ourselves, starts with giving love to ourselves. And I thought, well, that seems a little selfish or a little kind of, I don't know. And over time I've come to see the wisdom of this, I think it's something that we know intuitively, that it's really difficult to love others if we don't love ourselves. And when we can appreciate ourselves, accept ourselves for as we are, have compassion for ourselves, then we can meet others, with, it's easier to sort of let others in. What people have noticed, and I don't know if this is just a modern thing or if this is something in our country or in the West, but sending metta, sending love for oneself, is often one of the most difficult. So the way the practice goes is we send love to ourselves, and then it's like moving out wider and wider in widening the circle. So the next target of our love, object of our love, recipient of our love, is what's classically called the benefactor. A person who we have uncomplicated feelings of positive regard towards. It's, I think in the literature it's suggested, as a parent, although often we have complicated relationships with our parents. So maybe it's a grandparent, or maybe it's a teacher, or a beloved friend, or someone who has supported us in our life and given us this, the light, the warmth that we've needed to blossom. So this sending love to oneself and love to the benefactor. Some people find that it's easier to start with the benefactor, that it's actually our relationship with ourselves is complicated. And, if I feel in some ways unworthy of love, or, have complicated feelings about myself, sometimes it's easier to start with the benefactor and start with someone who there's, or I don't know how kosher this is in the tradition, but maybe it's a pet, maybe it's a faithful dog who we have totally unconditional love for and we have totally uncomplicated feelings for, this being, and this is a way of practicing this, of practicing just this sending this love, and we can imagine this being sending love back to us, and maybe from that it gives us a sort of taste of this, which we can then give to ourselves. So there's love for oneself, love for the benefactor, friend, sometimes say love for the friend. And then the third one is, sometimes it's translated as love for a difficult person in our life. Sometimes it's translated as an enemy. That's a little, again, this can be such a powerful practice, and it's not about feeling a right way or the way we're supposed to feel about someone difficult, but it's this intention. It's this sort of inclining the being towards softening around a person who may be difficult in our life, and just to, without even interacting with that person, it's possible to discover that our relationship with the difficult person begins to change. How we see the person begins to change. And it's amazing. It's really amazing. Often people find this practice very helpful on meditation retreats that are silent. When you're on a silent retreat, even if it's for a weekend or for a week or for a few weeks, we're still relating to other people. We still have these almost sort of imaginary relationships with other people, and it may be someone who inadvertently bumped you in the line, or there's just something they do that you find really difficult, in some way, or you had an exchange with them before the retreat started that was difficult, and somehow over this silent retreat where we're meant to be here and radiating love, and they become an enemy, and so the practice of sending them love, sending them well wishes, can be amazingly powerful in how it changes us. It's not about them. It's about changing our relationship to them. What is it to send love to difficult? So it could be a difficult person in our life. It could be a difficult person in the news. Maybe. What is it? Maybe that person deep down just wants to be loved. Just wants to be appreciated, respected, and somehow it's all tangled up in all this other stuff, and I don't know. So love for oneself, love for our friend, our benefactor, love for a difficult person, and then it's a love for all beings, and it's just getting wider and wider and wider. So this very sweet practice of love as something that we can drop into our own heart, and that can somehow soften how we see the world, how we experience the world, how we experience ourselves. And then I said this a little bit before, but one of the benefits of this practice of implicitly and explicitly calling up love is we start to notice the obstacles to love. We start to notice the places in the heart that are holding, that resist, that say, no, I can't love this person, or I can't fully love myself because of X, Y, Z. And just to notice that, just to notice the places of where it seems that love can't, the crevices, the corners of the heart, where the light of love can't fully reach. And so then, when we notice this, when we notice resistance to love, we meet that resistance as much as we can with love, with kindness, with care. Rather than, I can't even love in the right way, or I can't even, trying to hold whatever comes up, whatever barriers to love, with care, with kindness, with compassion, and trusting that over time, what needs to happen will happen, what needs to melt, what needs to dissolve. It's like the heat, mindfulness, awareness, metta practice, love is like the heat that's melting all the frozen spots inside of us. And just to trust that process, that being out in the sun, it really works. We don't have to figure it out. We don't have to kind of force it to happen. I made the mistake of leaving one of my cars, a minivan, in a very shaded spot during the rains of the last months. And then when I came back, did I talk about this before? When I came back to pick up my car in Los Altos, and it was filled with mold. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God, and the child seats were covered in mold, and this, and I thought, oh, and it was like the combination of the sort of relentless rains and just the moisture, the wetness, and then there wasn't much sun, and then the car was parked in a way where it wasn't getting sun anyway, and so this, it didn't have the chance to sort of just dry out, clean out, purify, and so it just kind of, anyway, so we can get a little moldy, and this practice is like the sunlight. This is like opening all the windows, all the doors, and letting this, letting the encouragement of light, as this said, be felt against our being. And it shows us where the barriers are. It shows us where just intending to send love to someone who's difficult immediately shows us, oh, this is where the heart is holding on in some way, and it's great. It's great information for us. I also just wanted to say one thing about love and attachment, which is one of the most difficult, maybe one of the most difficult things with our loved ones, or with our children, or with our partners, or is it possible to love someone without being attached to that person? I remember when I had my first child, one of my meditation teachers, Jack Cornfield, who you probably know, he turned to me and said something like, with a knowing smile, he said, "Now you will really understand attachment." And I think this is one of the koans for my own practice, one of the riddles. What is it to love without attachment? What is it to, when we love someone, first of all, we're partial to them. So is that the same thing as this metta, is this pure love for all beings? Well, yes and no. I mean, there's probably some ways it's similar, in some ways it's different. One of the clearest ways that I understand this question of love and attachment is this very simple understanding of love. Love says, I want you to be happy. Attachment says, I want you to make me happy. So I want you to be happy versus I want you to make me happy. And so for most of us, it is a mix, and it's complicated. It's complicated. One of the other really nice teachings that I had heard indirectly from a Japanese Zen teacher who was asked about specifically dealing with children, love and attachment and children. And he said, build a wall of love around your children. And then when they can climb over the wall, let them go. When they climb over the wall, let them go. Oh, that's a nice... somehow what I like about that is it acknowledges this natural... We want to make a wall around our loved ones. We want them to be safe. We want to protect them. And part of the reason we want them to be safe is they're around for us, and so we can love them, and so we don't have to miss them. And then, but a part of love is also letting go when it's time to let go, and when it's healthy to let go. I guess the final thing I wanted to say is one of the ways that this practice of love and this practice of practicing on ourselves, practicing on the friend, the difficult person, the neutral person. Oh, that's another one. I forgot about that one, the neutral person. So sending love to the person who we don't have any particular feelings about either way. And then, to all beings. Maybe part of the reason we practice on these particular beings, these particular objects, is to start to understand what it might be like to have a love that has no object. What does that even mean, to have a love that has no object, to love before there's even something or someone to love, Of course, there's a Rumi poem called Love with No Object. There is a way of loving not attached to what is loved. Observe how water is with the ground, always moving towards the ocean, though the ground tries to hold the water's foot and not let go. This is how we are. With wine and beautiful food, wealth and power, or even just a dry piece of bread, we want and we get drunk with wanting. And then the headache and bitterness afterward. These prove that the attachment took hold and held us back. A love with no object is a true love. All else shadow without substance. Leave partial loves and find one that's whole. Where is someone who can do that? They're so rare, those hearts that carry the blessing and lavish it over everything. To carry the blessing, lavish it over everything. It reminds me of this Suzuki Roshi teaching, to be grateful before we have something, rather than a kind of love that's transactional. What is it to just, to be in a space where everything, it's, each movement of mind is love. Everything we see is love. There's nothing that's outside of our love. So I thank you very much on this Valentine's Day, love day. I send you a lot of love, and this is something this world needs more of, and so I feel so fortunate that we have this practice that it's a practice of love. It's it's a way of relating to ourselves and to the world that we can cultivate, and good things will happen from that. So, thank you. I don't know if anyone wants to say something or a question, or we have a few minutes. Share what you've discovered about love.
I like the line in the Joan Baez song, Love Song to a Stranger, I think it is. Because if love means loving, expecting nothing in return, I'll need a whole nother lifetime to learn.
If love means expecting nothing in return, yeah.
So it is a hard one for me in relationship. I've grown and grown and grown and grown at that, but it comes up at the 3-year-old comes up at the most surprising moments, and there it is. And lately, I feel kind of like when that happens, I don't act in a lot of ways that I used to. But it's such an emotional, so toxic. So I end up feeling a little, it's thrown off. And it feels really hard to get back to a place of openness to self. I feel a lot of shame and regret for the wasted time. Because love isn't happening when that's happening.
Right.
As much as I'm wanting it in that moment, I'm not letting it happen. If your daughter's there going, Papa, 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 she's not feeling loved, right? She's
right.
caught up in the Papa, Papa, Papa.
Right.
So it's, I don't know how many times. I mean, I can go on for weeks, maybe even months, but then it's just this blast. Yeah. I guess all I can do, I mean, at that time, I don't know what to do at that time sometimes. I just wait. Because in a way, the capacity to repair that myself while I'm still in the fallout feels fractured. Or my ability to be mindful or connected to oneness feels fractured. I don't know if you have any advice.
Well, it's a great, I think we can all relate to that, and this is a great observation of how in the wanting, the very thing we want gets blocked, and that's the painful irony of this whole, and it's often our conditioning around if love is this openness, when we close down and when we around wanting that, whatever it is, to be appreciated, to be seen, we're blocking the very thing we need. And in those moments when that, I find the most, sometimes the most helpful way to let love in the side door is to see if we can bring up some care, some kindness, compassion for this very pain, and that's, in thinking that, oh, it's this thing out there, we're not seeing how very close it can be and as soon as it's like it almost can be, once you kind of get very practiced in that, it can be this sort of like just this, oh yeah, this remembering and this softening just opens that, but the kindness towards the pain around it is, one of my teachers says about compassion, especially self-compassion, he says, it's the only thing that works. You try everything else, but it's really the only thing that works. And when we genuinely, open to it and accept it, often we can think we're accepting something, but really there's a lot of resistance to it. There's a lot of resistance to feeling that way. There's a lot of resistance and so we can kind of go through the motion of, okay, I accept it, but it seems that only when we one teacher I have, he talks about how he found that one easy check to see, am I really accepting this, or am I sort of partially accepting it? It was just this mental exercise. If I'm this way for the rest of my life, it's totally fine, totally okay. And then when he said it, he was like, no, this is not okay. There was this acceptance with this eye towards the acceptance will make it go away. And, and so we just see it. We just notice all these different ways that, and when it's genuinely okay, somehow something can be released to that. So but I think the other way I think about it is that just bringing love into whatever can accept our love. So if it's not, if it's not myself in the moment, or if it's not that person or that, is it the difficulty? Or if it's not the difficulty, is it the pain of not being able to accept the difficulty? Maybe it's that pain, or maybe it's, or maybe it's just the pain around, just keep zooming out until there's a place where that acceptance or that love can land. But it's a great, and just practicing with that, I think good things will happen. But thank you. You want to take the mic? Yeah.
At the time, my 22-year-old child was studying abroad in Florence, and then afterwards he was going to be backpacking for several Eastern European countries. And he wrote to me after he finished with his studies, and he said, Mom, I'm terrified. And, I emailed him back immediately and said that that wasn't certainly the experience I'd hoped for him as he was starting his journey to the different hostels. And that once he got to the hostels with other young men and women, that hopefully he would feel much better, and that I hope that he wouldn't be suffering for too long. But and that's how I felt. And was I ever even going to see my son again? And then I thought, well, I should be running to Europe, or I should be doing something. My child is terrified, and I just kept sending him loving kindness and hoping that he wouldn't suffer for too long. And then I thought, no, that's not enough. I should be...
Yeah.
But as told him that Jonathan was at that time experiencing some fear, he was, planning an airfare to get there as quickly as he could. But not me. I was just wanting him not to suffer for too long.
And did it work out okay? Did he?
Yes, within a day or two, he was in hospitals and he was being welcomed.
Yeah. No, I think we can all, that movement, we want to make it okay. And we want to, and how much is, it's like that building that wall of love. And how much of it is, at a certain point, children, we need that protection. At a certain point, it's not, maybe it's, like the immune system, it needs to have challenges in order to be trained. Otherwise, it overreacts. I toured a school recently, and it was this sweet, wonderful school, and they were talking about how devastated a lot of the children were about the elections. And this is a school that goes like K to 8, so there's certainly, at a certain point, they're aware of current events and they're involved, and they were really crushed, really heartbroken. And then I thought about how, I've carefully shielded my children from even any image of, they're younger. But then I thought, well, how, when is it appropriate to have that bubble of protection and not need to know anything? And then when is it, really a learning experience and to go? And she said it was one of the great things, to process all of this and go through the emotions and talk about democracy and talk about activism and, so hopefully it was a way. It was probably was a shock for some of the, whatever, but it was ultimately it was good, to go through these difficulties and learn that we can survive that. There can be terror and fear at the unknown, and if we kind of stay with it and we're sensible and we can get through it, and it will change, and it will. So, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much.